and I would agree, is when you can't cry anymore, that's when you're in real trouble. When you stop crying, that's when you need to go for help, because you don't have too much longer.
Oh, that's good, because I cry at commercials. So I'm still okay. I'm doing good.
No, but it is like and I noticed in myself when I was going through my own period of like, the dealing with moral injury, dealing with all of that. That was the thing that struck me. It's like, I just want to cry. Like, I just want to feel like I have this capacity to move it out, and to engage with my emotions as opposed to having to suppress them and move past them.
Veterinary medicine doesn't break people because they're weak. It breaks them because they're responsible, capable, and trained to push through discomfort without ever being taught how to process it. Today's episode is about that line, the line between endurance and damage, between coping and avoidance, between functioning and actually being okay. My guest is Dr. Alia Offman, a Canadian registered psychologist who works directly with veterinarians, healthcare professionals, and other high-burden, high-responsibility professionals. Her work sits at the intersection of mindfulness, integrated CBT, exposure-based treatment, and ethical, evidence-grounded approaches to trauma and psychedelic-informed care. This is not a conversation about self-care checklists or learning how to relax. This is a conversation about capacity, how professionals learn to tolerate discomfort without shutting down, how avoidance quietly disguises itself as strength, and why insight alone doesn't change anything unless the nervous system comes along for the ride. If you're a veterinarian who's high-functioning, respected, and silently exhausted, this episode is for you. If you've ever said, I can't fall apart, too much depends on me, this episode is for you. This is Irreplaceable Truths, and today we're talking about what actually changes people. Because you deal with veterinarians. Actually, You know what? Let's go. Yeah, you deal with veterinarians. But why don't you give everyone a quick intro to who you are and what you've been doing?
Right. So Dr. Alia Offman, psychologist. I was trained as a social psychologist originally, went into human sexuality. That was my main area of research, and then moved from that into mindfulness. That's really where my main focus is. And, over the last 20 years as a practicing therapist, I've seen a lot of trauma. I work with a lot of veterinarians, military vets, police officers, firefighters, frontline workers. And it's really an area that I enjoy doing the most amount of work, because we often are so afraid of trauma. It's trauma-informed, don't do this, don't do that. But, when we really get into understanding how trauma is our relationship with ourselves, how it is formed in childhood, and seeing that, it exists in the mind, which of course is just a function of the brain. And we can use practices like mindfulness to change that. It's really hopeful for me. And I came working with veterinarians in a, kind of very honest, organic kind of way, and that they were ending up in my office, living in a rural area. They come in, whether that be the veterinarians, the techs, all of them. And I went, oh my gosh, like, these people look like frontline workers. Their trauma is that of frontline workers. And so I started going, okay, well, I want to look a little bit deeper into this, and I want to see, what's going on. How is this population being underserved in what's going on? And then, of course, you go down the rabbit hole of veterinarian mental health. And wow, there's a lot there. So for me, it's about normalizing that experience, is that while veterinarians definitely have a different story, and I would say that, you guys are the worst, because like, even working with police officers and military, there is that understanding and knowing, like, hey, the stigma is shrinking, right? People are asking for help, but veterinarians, it's so hard to get you into the office, into groups, because there's this feeling of like, no, I can handle it. I can do it. I'm smart. I'm intelligent. I'm capable. I'm driven. I mean, hey, it's the most competitive program to get into. So what do you guys have to do to get in there? So you're like, I'm competent and capable. you'll give anything to anybody else. But when it turns around to asking for yourself, it's incredibly uncomfortable. And that really, to me, is where all this trauma meets in different professions, because, you know, kind of that's where it comes down to, is that inability to kind of say, like, I need that help, and to understand it and to cross over that, right? And the access, sorry, one more thing, and like your access to, of course, your information around end of life care and access to it makes it a deadly combination.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, veterinary medicine, highest rate of burnouts, highest rates of suicides.
Yeah.
What do people misunderstand about the why of the struggle? What are people missing?
How long do you have? Maybe distill it down a little bit. Give me a little bit more to go on there, because I mean, in terms of trauma care, there's a lot missing with veterinarians, you know. I mean, or I could be cheeky and say, like, it's this thing that we started to talk about around moral injury and burnout, right? And what I was just kind of saying about my own son wanting to be a veterinarian, but concerned about, well, what's the link to his own childhood trauma around animal care and stuff. So what a lot of people, I think, don't understand is that it's like, oh, well, we're just having this conversation. If we could just stop someone from committing suicide, if we could talk about this or that, but until we can really get down to feeling, and this is the thing a lot of people don't like, at that point where that moral injury occurs. And, you know, I don't have to say much about the business of veterinarian care. I remember someone, when I was doing some interviews with different veterinarians across the states, she was telling me, and correct me if this is wrong because I didn't look deeper into it, she said that there was a major chain of veterinary clinics that was bought out, and they brought in Starbucks and Hertz, was it? The management from Starbucks and Hertz to kind of be like, well, hey, how can we bring your model into veterinary care, right? So just kind of that rollout, like, imagine, we don't have to imagine, you're in the profession, like, but for me, I'm like imagining what it means every day to have a human and an animal in front of you where you're making really serious decisions. And you know that in the back of your head, someone going, go faster, do more, push this, do that. Like, how do you balance these two things about staying, you know, true and honest to yourself while also being pushed by a system that, you know, doesn't validate that? And that's the moral injury, right? That's the moral injury right there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, no, it's, well, I did not have Starbucks or Hertz, but the corporate conglomerate that bought me out, all their higher ups were from lens crafters. I don't know if you, you know, and you know, you're absolutely right. Do more, work more, see more, do it with less as we raise the prices on your clients.
Yeah.
That's exactly the model that leads to the moral injury.
Yeah.
And it is hard. It is hard. You know, that for the older, definitely for the older practitioner, it is very hard to see that. It's heartbreaking. For the early career professionals, they don't really know better unless they really truly had a lot of hours at a private practice somewhere before going in, and hopefully they can sniff that out when they get out. You know, because it's a hard thing. Is there a common mistake that we make when it comes to, you know, therapy as veterinarians? Oh, there it is. I love making the therapist laugh. That's good.
Not coming, right? Like, that would be it. So that belief, like, you know, when your day starts, and, you know, the moment that you start to stumble during your day, when you realize, like, you just can't do it all and you can't get it all done, but, you know, you've got a basket of, you know, metaphorical rocks in there that need to be moved. So you just keep putting them in your backpack. So people will kind of reluctantly come into therapy and say, okay, like, I want to talk about this, fix me. And it really is like they're taking the car to the oil changer, as if I can just unscrew something, drain the oil out, put clean stuff in, and they can drive away. Whatever it took to get you into my office, we have to work in reverse to get it back again. So, I mean, one of the things that I'm asking people to do is sit in really uncomfortable places, and running from those uncomfortable places, believing that I can use drugs and alcohol, I can shop, gamble, anything that I can do to get me away from that discomfort, that avoidance. Well, that will make me feel better. And that really is the downfall of anybody who is kind of working in that frontline aspect, is the belief that, well, I have the strength that I can just work harder, faster, longer, stronger, instead of saying, okay, you know what, maybe I need to stop. Maybe I need to take some time, because it is an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure, right? To stop for a month, to take time to recharge, to refocus, will last way longer than, coming 6 months later and you're burnt out. Because once burnout happens, then it's really hard. It's so much easier to, I used to use the analogy of a frying pan, and, you've got tomato sauce in your frying pan, and, it's a cast iron pan, and you put your hand on it, you're going to move it on the counter, and you go, oh my God, this is kind of like really hot. I'm going to drop it. But if you drop it, it's a really big mess that you're going to have to clean up. Whereas if you just hold on for another minute, you're going to make it to the other side. And so when people, it's kind of a reverse. I don't want you to keep holding on to that hot thing. But if you come in when you start to feel that moral injury, it's really taking root and things are happening. You're not happy. You're angry. You're tired. You're forgetful. You can't multitask anymore. You need to listen. These are all the PTSD symptoms, all that cognitive decline that starts to come in. Like if you can deal with that when the moral injury comes up, or before it becomes full-blown burnout, then it's a lot easier, because once you're in burnout, then it's not just my job. Now you're also talking to the people that deal with your body, because your body is literally burnt out, right? The physical body cannot carry the burden that the mind is continually putting on it.
Absolutely. So, wow, so much to unpack from that. It, yeah, and well, just from everything you said, what does the outsider miss when it comes to the veterinary stress? Because people are shocked when I go over stats, about veterinary medicine, just the suicide rate. And I know I don't really care to talk about suicide, because in my opinion, we've lost. You're there way too late. Like you are there way so late.
Yeah.
What do you think they're missing? Is it because they just, why do you think they're so shocked? Do people just think
who are so shocked? Like other people that learn about.
Yeah.
Well, because, so I have, I've got 5 cats, a dog, 9 chickens, I go into the vet and, to take care of something, and all of a sudden I've got this massive bill, right? And, that's what people see. That's what they think of it. Oh, look at you. It's so great. You play with animals all day, and you're making all this money. And I don't think that people really get in to consider the pressures that veterinarians are under, especially in our current world, where we know, like, I have a lot of clients who don't have children. They have pets, right? And so I see people that have children, and here in the Canadian healthcare system, they can go into the doctor whenever, wherever, how many times they want. They don't get a bill on the other side, right? And they'll take they're anxious about their own health. They're anxious about their children. They take them in and they're like, okay, fix them. So we've got these people that are now coming into the veterinary clinics, right? And they're like, the dog is my baby, do everything, do everything, do everything. So you've got these pressures of parents that are coming in. You've got, the corporations that are saying, hey, you need to make more money, you need to move through the next person. And you've got a human being in the middle that's saying, I came into this for my love of animals. And now the animal is no longer my client. That animal is, how much money can I make? How much can I save that animal from the pain of other people? And, you're working with somebody that can't speak. that doesn't have agency, and we have to rely. And so the all of the different opportunities for, again, go back to moral injury. It's just an easier catchphrase to kind of say. I could give you all the list of things that could happen, but that moral injury, where their internal structure that says this is what's right for me, is now coming into conflict with, say, for example, making the money to feed their own family, right? Or not being burnt out at the end of the day. So I don't think that people are really aware of the pressure that veterinarians are underneath. I mean, people know about dentists and like the pressure they were under, right? But now you guys have surpassed dentists for that one. So I think it's just a real lack of education. And I've gotten into it on LinkedIn a few times with people around this topic. And I've had, not veterinarians, sorry, like the clients, they're saying, oh, well, they chose this profession and they should be more engaged. And I'm like, they didn't choose this profession, right? They chose to be veterinarians. They did not choose to be in this mill, right, of pressures that they're under to meet, good care for animals.
For cheap.
For cheap. Yeah. For cheap.
I mean, you gotta put it in there, because the one that would hit me in the heart like a dagger would be like, I thought you were supposed to be compassionate.
Yeah.
And you're like, really? I'm sorry, this is what my rent is, and I'm sorry, this is what my work, my insurance is, and my lab fees are, and the medications are, and the minimum wage in California, and workman's comp, and you keep going on and on and on. It's just like, and my wife, who's also a full-time veterinarian, is also like, could you imagine walking into your doctor and acting like this? I mean, I don't know why we're the punching bag, but I think it's because, like you said, with the human healthcare in Canada especially, there's no bill at the other end.
Yeah.
Here we have insurance that people seem to forget they're paying anywhere from $500 to $5,000 a month for.
Yeah. And I think also a little bit of an element, at least what I pick up, is it's like also like the mechanic, right? Like, is the mechanic fleecing me because I don't know anything about my car? And so is the veterinarian fleecing me because I don't know anything about my dog or my cat or their health? And so it's mistrust as well, right? And so I think the profession in itself has come to a place where the customers are like, well, I don't want to do this because of this. And that pressure is there, and the lack of understanding. And then I could ask you, of all the veterinarians that you know, how many of them come into the profession without some kind of childhood trauma themselves, right?
Yeah, and that goes back down to that ACEs. Was there a study done on that? I don't know if someone was going to do it, or if they did that, looking at veterinarians and comparing their ACEs score.
I'm not sure, but it would be really interesting to see what that score is like compared to other professions. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm all in. You know me. Just send me down another rabbit hole. Let's go. Don't
finish the first study first. Start of the new one. Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
I mean, and that's the thing. Like, you're standing now from a place where you're comfortably distant from it, right? Like, you don't have to deal with that.
I'm still doing relief work here and there because I miss it. Yeah. I miss talking to the clients. That's the one thing I miss. I don't really have that emotional, drainage that I was having before, I think we tend as a profession to, be okay with all that emotional stuff, that emotional overload. At what point does that become dangerous?
Yeah, that's a good question. And in the back of my mind, I was just thinking about two people that I interviewed, one who is a veterinarian friend of mine, and then someone who else was a veterinarian in the States. And they told me that the way that they deal with the possibility of burnout, like the way that they are still staying mentally healthy and well, is that they don't turn away from the suffering. that when the suffering exists in the room, they don't try to fix it, they try to be present with it. And, you know, to me, that's a real important tipping point, because I'll go back to that idea of like, you know, rock in a backpack, right? And then it's like, yep, I can handle this pain. I can handle this one and I can handle this one. And it's at the point where it's just gotten so heavy and so much has happened that that final one goes on and that breaks. It's done. And it may not even be at work. It could be at home as well, right? It could be somewhere else where it's that final straw that says, I can't carry it enough. Now you go back to veterinary school. How did you get through? Like, did you have to stay up late at night? Did you memorize everything? Was it like, I know to get my PhD, like there was an exam that I had to write, my ethics, not my ethics exam, my, like my phone, I had to study every day for a year. Every day for a year, I needed to take time out to study for this. I know that I have mentally abused myself in my drive to achieve and to get to where I wanted to go. It was like, okay, lock it in there, get it in, do it, push it more. You can go, you can do it. Hey, you're worried about tomorrow's exam? Stay up all night. You can just do it tomorrow, right? So these helping professions where we've got all these fancy letters behind our name, they force us into these positions where high achieving individuals that put their own wants and needs to the side, usually linked to trauma, you know, we come into that. And then the idea of being like, dude, let's like be super chill now, right? You know, my other work is I work in psychedelics and with cannabis and stuff. And so like I've got all these people that on one side are that like super chill, right? Like, yeah, that's going to be okay. That's not what happens in veterinary medicine. That's not what happens in, you know, with physicians or anybody that has been in this competitive field. And so you don't know when to stop because you've never had to stop. There's always been more space to keep going. And the day that hits you, I say it's like the 2x4 hitting you in the head, like it's too late, right? It's too late.
So is there a difference then between resilience and endurance?
Yeah, exactly. There totally is. I think you probably have more endurance if you've got resilience. So resilience to me is the ability to, let me change I'll come back, circle back to resilience, but I want to introduce a word called equanimity. So equanimity, for anybody that's listening from the mindfulness field, might know this one. So I train people in equanimity, and equanimity is the ability to feel what is occurring, experience what's occurring in the present moment, not turn away from it, but also not wallow in it. We're going to move through it. So equanimity is a way of being resilient because we're confronting every moment as it's occurring with a sense of non-reactivity. This is why I train people in mindfulness, because it really is this, it's not a panacea, but it is transdiagnostic in its capacity to help people deal with things and then give them the tools. So resilience then is built on the ability to meet reality in the present moment, to know what is going on, to know your limits and say, hey, like, I can step back. I can take a day off. Sure, that means there's a lot that's going to have to get done, like rescheduled. I know sometimes it's better to work when I'm sick than try to reschedule a day because it's like so much less work. But if we have equanimity, you can say, well, listen, I need this today for me to be better. And then guess who shows up healthy and rested on Monday morning? Whereas pushing through is like, you know, it's like, it makes me think of a football player who gets the injection in his knee so he can keep playing. But then, you know, how long is it going to take before he can't walk on that knee anymore? So if we push through, there's going to be a point where we hit the wall and we can't push through anymore. With resilience, no, with resilience, we know we have that discernment. We've listened to our intuition. We have the discernment to know when to back off and when to push forward.
And that, okay, so it's like a coin flip. Some people think resiliency is a trait, and the other half think resiliency is learned. Right. Is that, and do you think that comes with maturity or length in the profession, or which side of the coin are you on that one too?
Yes. Yes is my answer. I'm on both sides. So again, I'll go back to, because resiliency isn't my area of main focus, but I think it's close enough to mindfulness skills. So when we talk about being mindful, it's about being present moment aware. And then that equanimity comes in. And in the mindfulness literature, we talk about state mindfulness and trait mindfulness. So state mindfulness would be when I'm meditating and I'm very purposefully trying to be present moment aware. In that state, I am mindful. But the more I train my brain during that meditation, the more my trait mindfulness increases. And some would say that we're born with different levels of trait mindfulness. So I think that I could make, I don't think anybody's going to get too mad at me, although they might say, hey, get to know the research a little bit better. But I think we could say that we're all born with a set point of resilience, and that we can be quite resilient in a moment if we're given that training, if somebody is assisting us. And the hope is over time, the more we do that, the more resilience we have. And I think that for someone like you who has made it through the profession, you're standing on the other side, absolutely that maturity and that awareness to say like, hey, not my monkeys, not my circus, right? When they're my monkeys, I'm going to go and deal with them, and because I'm going to reserve that. But then when it's not my monkeys, I'm not going to have anything to do with it. But how do we know what are our monkeys and what aren't, right? And that's the difficult thing, especially working in an environment where your caretakers looking after one another, like whose is yours? Is it the animals? Is it the person that owns the animal? Is it the other person in the clinic? Is it the person that's at the front desk that's dealing with all of this? So it's about knowing and learning how to balance that. And we're just not taught in Western society how to care for ourselves other than the harder, faster, longer, stronger achievement, right? Because achievement's the other part of all of this too.
Well, I think in this profession, we're all such people pleasers that our monkeys or your monkeys or their monkeys, they're all the same.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
You take on other people's monkeys, and then all of a sudden you become a monkey keeper.
And so the training to be the monkey keeper starts with those adverse childhood experiences, because that's where the child goes, oh, wow, I have parents or I don't, or caregivers or don't. I'm not safe in this world. There are not adults here that will keep me safe. So now I have to learn to keep myself safe. Now, I typically, and this is simplistic, I typically see people go in two directions. One is, well, if I'm not safe, if this world is chaotic and there's nothing I can do about it, drugs, alcohol, check me out. I'm done. What's the point? The other side, and often I see this even in the same family with siblings, is right. Okay, how do I create this algorithm in my brain that will allow me to know how to operate in any present moment so that I can survive? And that typically comes from looking at the face of the parent and saying, what do I have to do to make you happy so that I can feel safe? Right? So now you've got this person in the office, and they're irate and they're upset, and they want you to fix the animal that they haven't been treating well themselves. Not everybody, but we're going to just exaggerate this one. And now you want to please them. I mean, you don't want to have your, somebody complain about you, because they can complain. I don't know what they call it here. It's our college. Like, I get complaints to my college. So they could complain to your college. They could complain to the owner. They could do all of these things. And you're sitting there going, oh my God, like, how do I deal with this? And then the thing that I think really makes you so distinct from other professions, except for maybe those dealing with babies, is, but the real suffering is in the animal, and the animal is just kind of off to the side somewhere in all of this. But you know where it is, because that's why you got into the profession. That's a lot to hold.
Do you think the profession is training all of us to override our nervous system?
Yeah, of course, any frontline workers. That's why you're like police officers and firefighters and military, which is important. Like, it's important. I always joke with my police officers. I'm like, nobody wants me at a scene in a crime. Nobody wants me in a moment because I am like, let's talk about how we feel. You need a good cry, let's go. I deal with that stuff, but that's not going to fly in the moment, right? When someone's pointing a gun at you, you don't want to go, hey, tell me about your childhood experiences so I can really connect with you. So it's a necessary amount of shutting down when you're in these positions so that you can get through your workday. But, really the shutting down that I'm hearing is not a choice, right? The shutting down is that protective mechanism that the body is engaging in. If we know how to selectively shut down, like we can say, like, during this, I can't be feeling the things that I'm feeling at this moment. I can't be scared. I can't be worried because I need to be focused on what's in front of me. But when you get into that chronic state of arousal, which leads to burnout, right? We're pumping cortisol into, there's not the sleep and all of that. At a certain point, that just becomes your way of living. Right. And that's when it's really dangerous. And the line that I hear from people is, and I would agree, is when you can't cry anymore, that's when you're in real trouble. When you stop crying, that's when you need to go for help because you don't have too much longer.
Oh, that's good because I cry at commercials. So I'm still okay. I'm doing good.
No, but it is like and I noticed in myself when I was going through my own period of like, the dealing with moral injury, dealing with all of that. That was the thing that struck me. It's like, I just want to cry. Like, I just want to feel like I have this capacity to move it out, and to engage with my emotions as opposed to having to suppress them and move past them.
Why is it then in our profession, we're such great thinkers, but we are so poor at controlling our emotions?
Yeah, because go back to that same experience that I'm talking about. So you're 5 years old, there's chaos in your home. People are fighting. I mean, it doesn't, you can have food on the table. You can have a nice house. You can be keeping up appearances, but people are, say, fighting at home, right? And so you now need to find clarity in the chaos. Well, what do? This is so good. The body shuts down. The body says, hey, listen, I'll take it all so this can survive. So that algorithm of control begins to develop. And of course, it works really well. It's also the same thing that will get you through the demands of the education to get to it. And then there you are in the profession, and that's it, right? You're up here. And you can lock all of this, but the moment that something happens that this can't handle, what do? When this becomes overwhelmed and the algorithm no longer works, then you are flooded with all of these emotions that you have been suppressing, because the body is a repository of our life's experience. And if we don't release that, at some point, it's going to come back. So going back to training in mindfulness, this is what I train people to do is this is great. Like, I love the capacity that my traumatized brain has for rational thinking, productivity, and organizing it, but it doesn't run the show. My capacity to move through the experience physically in my body by meeting my sadness, my pain, my anxiety means that it doesn't have the control over me. It doesn't have the power, but you need to face it first. So, young professionals, if we can get veterinarians when they're in school to start training in practices that help them process their emotions, right? That's it. How do you deal with this? How do you learn to deal with your own stuff? Then we're future-proofing them against the things that they might come up against later on.
And am I wrong in thinking that I got to the point where I always felt that I was just preparing for the next crisis?
Hypervigilance goes back to childhood trauma. You name all of it, and it will go back again and again. It's that feeling of like, why rest? Why rest when, because if I'm resting nicely and someone's like, deal with it, like, that's a shock to our system. So I might as well just walk around all the time hypervigilant, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I've got 10 minutes, let's prepare for the next day, because if I relax, and that's the other thing, there's something called relaxation-induced anxiety, right? Like, when we start to relax, well, then our body says, mobilize, do something, because you don't know when you're going to get hit the next time. So when rest is seen as, not restful, again, another thing looking, you're at that point where you're asking more of the physical system than it can handle.
Yeah, because I always, like I said, I think they're always looking for the next emergency, the next crisis, the next
Yeah.
everything. I mean, what does this look like on a car ride home from a veterinarian's brutal day if they have a bad day?
Right.
What does that look like?
So I would say not in the car ride home because, you want to close your eyes and that's not going to be good for the car ride home. And I'm cheeky about that one. I would say, so when I train my clients, the veterinarians in mindfulness, a drive home can be meeting the sensations in the body, feeling them as they come up, but letting them pass. So clients get really good at observing the physical sensations that are linked to their emotional expression without attaching a sense of self, without that next thought, which is like, well, I got to fix that, or what am I going to do with that? So when the sadness arises, it's not like, oh, okay, I'll deal with the sadness by like, we'll go out and have a good time tonight so I can avoid it, or I'll use drugs, I'll use alcohol, I'll use gambling, sex, shopping, whatever it is. It's, I'm going to be present with this. Oh yeah, the tightness, the heaviness. So the car ride home can be the opportunity to decompress through approaching emotional experience as opposed to avoiding it. And with a meditation practice, we're setting ourselves up to do this in advance. So when you learn to meditate, like my clients do, then they're doing that at the beginning of the day. So they're going in, hopefully, with the recycling bin of all the daily stuff already empty. And then at the end of the day, they use it as a bookend to kind of empty it out again so that it's not adding up. We're each day kind of cleaning it up so that we don't have as much to filter through every day.
And I think part of the problem in our profession is we look at mindfulness as a relaxation technique, but they're two different things.
Very different. And this is across the field of mindfulness, like, oh, we're just going to get all zen and peace out. No way. Like, I joke and say that Buddha was the first cognitive behavior therapist because the whole principle is to sit with the discomfort and expose and desensitize to it. And so we're learning to expose and desensitize to those internal sensations. So there's nothing relaxing about doing, and I get in trouble for saying this, there's nothing relaxing about doing meditation, right? There is. Like for me in my practice now, I have a daily practice and it is my return to self. It is the time where, 4 kids, a million pets, busy career, they don't come into that. And if they do, they're coming in just to go out again. And then that helps me train because what I do during my meditation practice rewires this coconut, and it's the same one that I have in the rest of my life. So that work that I do during the meditation practice of being active and alert and accepting, I then carry that through into my day. It's not about blissing out and being quiet. Just go take a nap if you want to do that.
Yeah. Could you explain to the listeners, what does avoidance look like in a very cognitive, high thinking, very skilled professional?
Not dealing with phone calls, paperwork, files that you don't want to have to do with, taking on additional responsibilities in the office instead of saying no. That's the one that's really sneaky, right? Where you could say, because the way we look at avoidance and mindfulness is that it's not about the situations that you're avoiding, it's the discomfort in the body. So imagine, there's another vet that you care about and you can see that they're struggling and they want to take some time off. And if they take that time off, you need to work more, right? And inside of yourself, you're saying, oh my goodness, I don't have the capacity to work more, right? So which are you more likely to do? You're more likely to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to take that on and I'm going to help out that person. What you're avoiding in that very moment is the discomfort of saying no and choosing yourself over the other person. So people pleasing is an act of avoidance because it just says, don't worry, I'll take it on and I'll do it. So any action that moves away from focusing on self, like, can be avoidance, right? I mean, we can talk about drugs and alcohol as being an easy form of avoidance. Oh, I don't like the way I'm feeling. I'll get high or I'll get drunk. But, oh, I don't like the discomfort of letting other people down. I'll work longer. Oh, you know what? Like, there's an emergency today. I'll take that on. So the avoidance is kind of backwards, because you guys don't avoid things. You just do too much, right? And so learning to set that boundary, right? And say, like, no, I'm not taking this on. It's not my emotional responsibility, is going to go a long way. Because imagine if everybody in the profession stood up and said, I want my boundaries respected. Then the system can't do what it's doing anymore.
Do you think it's the concept of perfectionism that makes us keep taking on more and more because we think we can make everything perfect?
Yes. And then again, go back to childhood trauma. Why would we want to make everything perfect? So we can believe it. So that we don't have to go back and face that moment where whatever it was that happened made us feel imperfect, right? And usually there is this moment where a choice was made, that we regret, and that we're living the rest of our life. I shouldn't have sat on my grandfather's lap, or I shouldn't have gone to that house, or what if I didn't let my mom drive that day, or what if I had just been a better person? So we internalize it, and we're constantly trying to fix that childhood wound in the actions that we're engaging in the present moment.
So if you see another veterinarian that you work with or you know of or you're talking to on the phone, just one vet to another vet, can you give us any tips on how to challenge them to, without triggering them with shame or defensiveness? If you see them going through all these avoidance and doing all these things.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the thing that gets you access to anybody is authentically listening, right? And caring about that person's suffering. Because if you and we're both veterinarians, and I'm hearing that in you, right? Do I want to fix you? Do I want to be like, make sure that something bad doesn't happen to you? How much of that is also about me? Like, I'm looking at you, needing you to be a certain way. So when we kind of slip down into that authenticity, so we've got to do the work ourselves, and we've got to do the work to say, like, listen, I'm scared too. I feel overwhelmed too. What you're telling me is my experience as well. So it's a difficult question to answer, because, I can go back to, I can give you the quick, suicide prevention answer, which is, get them to stop in a moment and think of something else. Because if we can just distract in that moment of high suicidal ideation and get them onto another track, then it's less likely to happen in that moment. Of course, Frontline, let's do that. But, now this opens up into a larger issue, is in terms of a society. How much are we trained to authentically meet our own emotions, and therefore prepared to meet the emotions of other people? So just acknowledging, I see you. I see you're suffering. I don't know what to do with it either, because I've got it inside of me. That honesty, of course, because now that means that you got to meet that person where they're at. And that's hard unless you've done the work yourself, right? So it's difficult when you have people that are all in a sinking ship together, trying to help each other not drown.
And you have me thinking right now, like, when I was doing what I was doing, I was like, I got to be a father. I got to be a husband. I got to be a business owner. I got to be a veterinarian. Yeah. I can't afford all this to fall apart.
Exactly.
If you hear that, what do you think?
I think childhood trauma. And now, like, I'm using this term really sweepingly, and a lot of people will be like, not everything's childhood trauma, right? Unfortunately, I believe, and this is, also from the work of Gabor Mate, which is, I think I think we're probably close enough in age to know, like boomer parents and like the lack of emotional support and well-being. We are all living through this collective trauma where we were not taught how to actually kind of meet our own suffering and our own self. So we're trying to hold it all together. That there's a direct link between, as an adult, I can't let let this fail. And that moment in childhood when something did fail and we're so afraid of it, as somebody, I'm not a perfect parent, not by any means, but my kids are doing pretty well. I'm very proud of my oldest son, but I've let him suffer so much. And I'm always there. He doesn't have to deal with it on his own, but I'm there to let him suffer so that I can show him how, so that when he gets to be, your career point, my career point, he doesn't have to feel like he's the one that needs to hold it all together. He knows that there are other people around him that were supporting him. So, holding it all together, when you hear someone say that, it's like, hey, like, you don't have to do that by yourself. And that's just something we are fundamentally missing in our society. And ironically is why we have so many pets, because they're the things that we can unconditionally love and feel supported by, right? And
well, they don't judge you. They don't talk back to you. They don't say you're stupid. They don't say you don't know what you're doing. They don't say you don't know how to do the new math they like to teach now.
I don't know. My cats let me know when they're angry because they pee on things, right? Like my cats give me really good, like, hey lady, we don't like what's going on because we know how much you hate when you pee on things. So that's it, right? They will. I mean, I'm teasing. They do love me, but and I love them. But yeah, they don't, and there's a beauty in that, right?
Yeah. Well, there is. But let me play devil's advocate for you really quick. What would you do in 15 years if your son went to a therapist and he said to you, you made me suffer childhood trauma?
I'd be like, thank God that you're having this conversation with me, because I was never perfect and it was never my intention. And I want to do whatever I can to listen to you so that I can help free you from that, because that's not yours, that's mine. And I'm willing to take that.
You mean he didn't have the book on how to be the perfect parent? I thought that existed.
No, there's no book on how to be because of course we're all going through our own stuff, right? And it's hilarious how the more I tried to save my children from my own child trauma, the closer I drove them to it, right?
Well, it's crazy. Also, you ever catch yourself sounding like your parents?
Oh God. Well, and it's the worst, because there's a lot that I love about them and there's a lot that I don't like about them. And I don't know which one I'm supposed to listen to.
You're talking about your parents or your kids?
All of it. Yeah. Now I love this. You're poking me like, hey, you've been poking my profession for a while. Let me poke the psychologist.
Well, I just have to play devil's advocate.
Tell me about your childhood trauma, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do a quick lightning round. Just, I hope the listeners will find this helpful. What's one sentence that signals burnout?
Oh, I can't cry. I'm not feeling anything. I don't feel it anymore. When you stop feeling, go get help.
What's one coping strategy vets rely on that backfires?
Trying to do it all themselves. People pleasing. Like I'm a solitary soldier.
One thing vet culture normalizes that it shouldn't.
The first two things. Working, like that there isn't the time and space to actually be a human in the room.
One emotion vets are trained to ignore.
Their own suffering.
One habit that would help vets more than yoga.
Meditation.
One boundary vets resist setting.
Time for themselves, time for their families, time for the things that would really replenish them when they're working, because you just get home and you're too tired. One
misconception about resilience.
One misconception about that it'll do everything. That it's this be all end all for thing, right? Great to have resilience for me. It'll be the be all end all if I can use that resilience to bring in all of the different resources around me, my community, the people that help me.
And last one thing early career professionals need to hear sooner.
There is no time like the present to care for your physical, mental, emotional, energetic, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, body. Start the practices at the beginning so that when things start to push up against them and you're realizing you're canceling your massage appointment, you're canceling your therapy appointment, you're not rebooking with your yoga instructor, whatever it is, because too much time is coming in, then you know you're in the danger zone of putting the needs of others before yourself. And that is, hey, listen, we can do it. I work with accountants and they tell me about how busy it is around tax time. I'm like, yeah, we all know that. Like, sure, if you got to go like full out for a month, too, great, because you'll get it back in the summer. So we all have our times where we do have to work and push through. But when we've created this really nice, healthy lifestyle around us, we're a lot more aware of when things begin to push and impinge on it.
Wow. That's crazy. Now in Canada, do you know in the veterinary schools, because I wish they did more of it here, do they do a lot of mindfulness training in the veterinary schools there? I kind of feel like Canada's a little ahead of the game.
I mean, we're facing in Canada, like we're facing all the same things that you're facing in the States, just with not the large market. And of course, just some of the differences, just around Canadian states. But in terms of, I have not heard from anybody about mindfulness being taught in the veterinary schools.
Yeah. During my MBA program at Pepperdine, we did mindfulness every day at the beginning of our organizational behavior class.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fantastic. I teach at Carleton University here, and I meditate with my my students. I mean, it's a class in meditation, but it makes a difference just seeing those students take the time to, and they're my favorite group to work with because I literally feel like I'm just stress proofing them for a semester and giving them a grade at the end.
So if people are listening and all of a sudden they feel exposed, what does that tell them?
So whenever I'm working with a client and we both feel like we want to throw up, that's when we know when we're touching something really deep. And so if you're feeling exposed, go talk to somebody, go start the process wherever it makes sense to you. And that can be a religious leader, a spiritual leader, that can be just talk to somebody to get started and point you in the direction. And then that leads into a whole other problem about how we are so isolated in our world right now. And it's hard to find people to talk to authentically. That's a whole other conversation.
You mean social media is not authentic? I thought everyone cared.
Hey, we met on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn's a little different. I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn's more professional. There is LinkedIn slop out there, but I mean, but most of the time you can tell by what people write and what they comment and what they post on that professional website. Yeah. You can weed it out a lot better.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. Yeah, no, social media is not a place to go to feel good about yourself.
Unless you want to just get away and feel better because you're like, oh, right. At least, like, I mean, I was laughing my ass off. I was watching all these videos of people falling on their butt in Texas because the ice is 2 inches thick. And they're just sliding down the driveway, bringing the trash in. But I guess that's
maybe as Canadians need to go down there and teach people, like we have like superpowers, right? We know how to walk on ice.
Well, if it ever does ice in South Florida, I'm sure the Canadians could teach everyone there.
Yeah, exactly. No, we don't want that.
So, is there a cost to staying functional but not disconnected with what's truly going on?
Huge. There's a financial cost. It's a lot of money to actually like do the work to stay connected. Like therapist, massage, Reiki, and all of that. Is there like a mental and emotional cost?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. I'm not going to lie. Like I keep my heart open to all of my clients, right? And, I work with police officers in forensics and, I work with snipers in the military, and I have to hear about a lot of really difficult things. And, I sit with them and I say, like, we joke and we laugh, like my police officers. I was like, hey, don't you, wouldn't you like to be like our friends over there that think that the world is lovely and perfect and nothing wrong is going? But I believe, and, And I think we could say this for veterinarians as well. Like I'm honored and privileged to do the work that I do, and so when I look at veterinarians in the times that I've had to have my own pets put down, I've been so very appreciative that they were the stewards that were there for me at that end of life care for my pet. And, I think that when we can look at the honest suffering that is occurring in the office and meet it and be willing to say, like, I can be hurt by this. It costs in the moment, but not long term.
If you were to guess, what percentage of veterinarians that leave the profession because they're burnout are actually able to recover and come back into the profession?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I've been looking for that number. I can't find it. I know.
And I don't think I'll give you, to me, what I would say is if they're meant to be in the profession, yeah, I think they can come back. But if they weren't meant to be in the profession, or if I'm extrapolating from my police officers, right? And, up here in Ontario, our Ontario provincial police are a bit of a mess, in my opinion, in terms of like how they're managed and everything. And there's a lot of burnout with them. And so for them, they don't go back because the system doesn't support them. They can't go back and stand there and go, wow, so I could die today, but the people that are supposed to be supporting me aren't supporting me. But for in other professions where they're like, yeah, like I'm just feeling burnt out, but with this adjustment, with my new capacity to walk in there and hold the boundary and hold the line, they can go back in. So burnout, if you follow it, leads to liberation as far as I'm concerned. Like, to me, if you get care for your burnout, it's not burnout, it's burn through. It's burning through whatever trauma you were dealing with. So now you're coming through on the other side and you can deal with it, right? So I can sit in rooms with people and talk about, who have dealt with the same childhood trauma that I have. And I feel a lot of care and a lot of love and compassion for them, but it ends at me. Right? Like it doesn't, well, I'll feel it in the moment. It stays in these four walls.
I love that. Burnout versus burn through. I just wrote that down. I love that. Yeah. I mean, because the other one that gets me is work-life balance. And I think it should be called more professional sustainability.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
Because I don't, absolutely. What is your opinion on when people say, oh, I need a work-life balance?
To me, that just goes back. It's avoidance, right? It's like, go back to the decisions that you are making that are saying that you're not getting that work-life balance, right? I know those difficult decisions. I had to let a lot of professional things fall by the wayside, because I was choosing to be the parent that I wanted to be instead of the future career psychologist that I wanted to be. And then I got the consequences now of that, right? There's a lot of professional, opportunities I wish I had taken 10, 20, 30 years. No, my kids are 30 years old, 10, 15 years ago. I'm making myself too old. But you know what? That's okay. That's okay, because I really am proud of the relationship that I have with my children and how I prioritize that balance.
Yeah, Dr. Offman, I really can't thank you enough for today's conversation, because you brought a lot of things. I mean, my pages are full of notes. And I thank you for being so candid and speaking on a subject and helping the profession as you do. Because unfortunately, we're too stubborn and we're too proud to say we need help.
Yeah.
And like you said, the stigma is changing, but just like everything else in veterinary medicine, we're slow to evolve. And I hope everyone listening understands that if this particular conversation we just had hit you in such a way that you're like, oh shoot, I recommend you go see a therapist. I recommend you go talk to somebody.
Therapist first, but like if the therapist thing is too much, just start somewhere, anywhere other than ChatGPT.
Or your parents, because you probably have childhood trauma.
All right.
Sorry,
Those
I
are the
had to
words.
do that. You said that. You pitched me a softball on that one. I had to smack it out of the park.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah. If they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
LinkedIn. My website is pretty easy, draliaoffman.ca. I'm not really good at shameless self-promotion. It always catches me when you say that. Yeah, so my website, you can check it out and see some of the work that I do.
Okay.
And, happy to just kind of point in the direction of like, hey, who can I talk to? If I want to start doing some trauma-informed work.
Yeah. Well, we didn't even get into the use of cannabis and psychedelics in the profession.
Oh, yeah, well, that would have taken. Listen, I would have liked to have steered it in that direction. I mean,
I'm sure you would have.
Hey, listen, I'll do a plug for it. Like, I mean, if you want to talk about treatment of PTSD, psilocybin, right? It's not the area that I work in, but the research is clear and the push is in the States for it. But, psychedelics are hitting us at a time when we need it the most, because especially for your profession who doesn't want to talk about anything, these are the things like, yeah, okay, let's do the hard thing. Like, it's a lot of work. It's not just a matter of taking some mushrooms and everything is great. You've got to work with the molecule. You've got to know, inside and out. But I think it is lending a lifeline to anybody that is struggling in a profession and wants something that's going to start to work quickly.
Well, again, thank you so much. Relief fades, capacity lasts. Yeah. Childhood trauma is real, and psychedelics are a possibility. That's what I took from this conversation.
I love it.
But no, thank you so much, because like I said, as we met before, before we did this, we have a lot in common. And there are so many wonderful people out there that are trying to do everything we can to help people. But unless you reach out, unless you ask, unless you realize, unless you actually ask for help, no one's going to know. There's a very good chance no one's going to know you're suffering.
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
Wonderful.
All right. To all my listeners out there, if you also have a question for Dr. Offman and you cannot get a hold of her, reach out to me. I'll reach out to her for sure. And again, we'll catch you all next time. Thank you so much.